Hey everybody, Ron Bielefeld, Whistling Wings Photography. Welcome to another video. This video is going to be my second installment in my Getting Better Birds in Flight series. This video is going to be all about autofocus, but not about what autofocus can do for you, but what you can do for your autofocus. So if you're interested in knowing more about what you can do to make your autofocus do more for you when you're shooting birds in flight, stay tuned. Okay, so we're talking about getting better birds in flight, and in this video, specifically about autofocus. And most of the time when people think about autofocus, it's what can the autofocus do for me? How good is it? How fast is it? How accurate is it? And that's fine, but I think it can help a little bit by thinking the other way around. And that is, what can I do to help out my autofocus system? Even though these autofocus systems we're dealing with nowadays in cameras like the Canon R5 and the soon to come out, it was announced today actually, the R3, these autofocus systems are getting unbelievably good, but we can still help them out if we think about things the right way. That's what I want to talk about. So the first thing is pre-focusing. I know a lot of you probably already pre-focus, but maybe some of you don't or never really thought about it. The closer the autofocus is to your subject already, as far as it being in focus, the easier time it's going to have, and the easier time you're going to have finding the bird in the frame and then getting the autofocus to acquire it first time. Right? First try, you're going to get it more often if it isn't just this way out of focus fuzzy blob. The best way to do this is try to predict, at least a little bit, the distance away that the bird is going to be when it shows up. It comes flying by, you see it perched up there in the tree, it's going to come flying down, land over here on this branch hopefully. Pre-focusing will help your autofocus system get on the bird quicker, get to accurate lock-on much quicker. So what I generally do, and we'll use an owl in flight as an example here, this is a GIF action series made out of 57 individual frames taken with the R5 and the 600 F4 Mark II. And I'll point out, if I would have focused where this bird was, which some people may do, you see the bird sitting on the branch, you want to get it in focus, so you focus on the bird sitting on the branch, and you sit there and you hold your camera up and you wait and you wait and you wait and you wait, and then your arms get tired, and then the bird flies, and then you try to get on the bird, and now you're pre-focused where the bird was, and it's coming really quickly toward you, and now instead of the bird flying into focus, if you would have pre-focused ahead of where the bird originally was, it's now flying further out of focus, making it much more difficult for you to get on the bird, see the bird at all, other than that fuzzy blob, and much more difficult for the autofocus to pick up what you're wanting to focus on, and then of course that autofocus is going to have to travel that much further to get to the bird. So instead of doing that, I pre-focus 3/4 of the way, halfway to where I think the bird's going to go, so that I can hold the camera down here, and then when the bird flies, by the time I get my eye to the camera and get on the bird, I'm intercepting the bird basically at the distance away that I had pre-focused, or very close. If not, I'm maybe even ahead of the bird a little bit on the pre-focus, so that the little extra time it takes me to actually get on the bird's flying into focus. It's getting more in focus as I'm tracking the bird, making it easier for me to see it, for the autofocus system to see it, and for it then to move that little bit of distance to grab and get autofocus lock, and then you shoot and follow the bird the rest of the way. That's pre-focusing. It can be done when you see the bird, sitting up in the tree, the owl example. It can be done if you've got birds flying back and forth, like tree swallows and things like that are really, really fast. You just pre-focus out on the water or out in the grass a little bit in front where you think the birds are basically going to be, and then you try to get on birds that are at that distance. Again, that pre-focusing makes it much easier to see the bird, get on the bird, for the autofocus to find the bird, get on the bird, and stay on the bird. And so that's the pre-focusing advantage. That's one way that you can help your autofocus system do a better job, is by pre-focusing, working with the autofocus rather than against it. Now, the second thing is, again, applicable still. We might be losing this applicability a little bit, but not yet. So with the camera, even the R5, which is a very, very new camera with a very, very good autofocus system, eye detect with tracking for birds, all that kind of stuff, I still try to get initial autofocus lock. I initiate autofocus for the first time when I'm getting on a bird when the bird is near the center of the frame. These systems still seem to be what I call center weighted. They're going to look first toward the center of the frame, not way up in the corners or toward the edges. They're going to look more toward the center of the frame and then look elsewhere. So if you can start by getting that bird near the center of the frame or in the center of the frame and then hit the autofocus button, whether it be half press or a back button, you're going to get initial lock on the first time a lot more often. So getting the bird near the center of the frame, then initiating the autofocus. If you miss, you pump it. Again, trying to get the bird near the center of the frame, not way out toward the edges of the corners or something like that. So that seems like an easy one and a basic way to go. But again, it's not what the autofocus is doing. It's what you're doing to help the autofocus do a better job for you. Now, the third thing is IBIS related. And a lot of times when we're shooting birds in flight, we're shooting high shutter speeds. And that, in a lot of people's minds, that negates the need for using IBIS, image stabilization, vibration reduction, steady shot, whatever you want to call it. It kind of says, well, why do I need to use that? I'm using high shutter speeds. That's going to basically help me out getting sharp shots. That's true. But IBIS can also help you get and keep accurate autofocus on your flying birds. And there's kind of three aspects to this. It helps you because it stabilizes the view for you when you're panning. So if you're going to shoot, I'm going to use Canon as an example because I shoot Canon. A lot of the lenses, the newer lenses now, like the 100 to 500, the 600 f4 Mark II, the 600 f4 Mark III, the 400 2.8, they have 3 IS modes on the lens. If you use mode 2, it's going to stabilize the viewfinder and still allow you to pan because it only senses your movement, your panning movement, and it's only going to try to stabilize in the opposite plane for the most part, and it's going to allow you to accurately pan with the bird. But it also stabilizes the viewfinder, which makes it easier for you to find the bird, get on the bird, put it in the center of the frame, initiate autofocus, get autofocus lock. It helps you determine when you have autofocus lock because a bird's a lot clearer. You can actually see the bird come into focus. If you're shooting mode 3, it doesn't do that it doesn't stabilize anything until you start actually shooting, until you press the shutter button and start taking images. Mode 1 stabilizes the viewfinder, but it's not what you want for birds in flight, not if you're panning, because it's going to try to stabilize the movement it's sensing in all axes. It's going to make it much more difficult for you to stay on the bird because it's going to be trying to counteract your panning motion, and that's not good. So mode 2 is the way to go, and that will stabilize the viewfinder for you, stabilize your view, help you get on the bird. Now, the second thing is it's going to help you keep the bird in the frame, keep it near the center of the frame. Again, that center weighted kind of thing. But in general, it's just going to help you keep it more stabilized in the frame where you want it. Initially, maybe in the center, later on, somewhere else in the frame. If you're using eye detect with tracking, actually composing in real time, like I mentioned in the first video in this series. You can actually start to do that. So stabilizing that view will help you in that sense. And now the third thing, because it helps you, the stabilized view in mode 2, let's say on a Canon camera with a Canon lens with IS, it's also helping another part of the system, and that's your actual autofocus system. The more stable the subject is in the view for you means it's more stable in the view of the autofocus system. It's going to make it easier for the autofocus system to know what subject you're really trying to focus on. It's also going to allow it to be more stable, so it's going to be able to get a better and more accurate lock on that subject, and it's going to be able to help it keep lock on the subject. By stabilizing the view, it not only stabilizes the view for you, but in a sense, it's stabilizing the view of your subject for the autofocus system itself. So it's really a benefit. Even if you're shooting fast shutter speeds, that doesn't matter. Even if you're shooting on a monopod or a gimbal head on a tripod or something like that, when we're shooting birds in flight, it's still not a stable situation when you're panning on a gimbal head or panning when you're using a monopod. There's still movement there. There's still vibration there. There's still jittering there, all that kind of stuff. So IS can still help stabilize the view for you and the autofocus system and help you get better, more tack sharp images when you're trying to work with your camera and your camera's autofocus system. So again, these videos are going to be very short and to the point, I hope, but I hope this gives you at least a insight, a view into how to work with your autofocus system rather than against it sometimes, to help the autofocus system do the best job it can for you when you're shooting birds in flight. Until next time, stay safe. I hope you have great light. I hope you get great images, and I'll see you soon.